Hi everybody, my name is Colin, and some of you may be familiar with a documentary that I produced a few months back called Buy One Get None, a retail documentary, in which I kind of highlighted the state of retail with all these closings and malls in general with today's retail climate in competition with online retailers and other factors. In that documentary, I actually visited Swansea Mall over in Swansea, Massachusetts as a point to highlight an example of how retail has changed certain malls for the worse. And in using that mall as a point, I didn't actually get to talk about the mall itself very much, so I decided with this video that I would try to retrace my steps and go back to the same footage and kind of give a commentary slash just my inside thoughts as to the whole situation. So with that being said, and keeping in mind that I understand all the factors that go into running a mall and that it's not necessarily down to one person at fault for all of these issues that I'm about to point out. So without further ado, let's take another trip back to Swansea Mall.
Discover the true values of Christmas at the Swansea Mall.
Contestants line up for hours before the doors open, all for a shot at becoming the Fox Providence Idol. Today, those who think they have what it takes are at the Swansea Mall. They will perform for a panel of judges, and one person will win a trip to the real American Idol auditions. Eyewitness News reporter Elizabeth Hopkins is amid all the action. She joins us now live from Swansea with more.
Thanks, Mike. You know, we've already seen lots and lots of very talented singers here at Swansea Mall, but if you think you have what it takes, you should really come down here to Swansea Mall. Get here before 2 p.m. There is still time for you to compete, and like you said, whoever wins goes on to compete in front of American Idol judges.
So what you're looking at here is actually raw, unedited footage in comparison to what you may have seen in the documentary. So this isn't processed or edited in any way. This is actually how it looked as I was recording it. This is Apex on the right here, which is a Rhode Island-based retailer. They are based out of Pawtucket, and they had a pretty good run until they eventually had to close all their department stores. Although I'm pretty sure they still exist in one form or another, but this store was no different. It closed in 1999, and it still has not had a tenant ever since. It's pretty much sat exactly as when it was done with its liquidation sale. It's desolate, it's abandoned, those fences are bent in, and I don't think that they can make this space appealing to another tenant, which is why it still remains this way to this day. As you can see, as we keep rounding the corner and looking at more of the Apex, this parking lot is just as empty can be. There is very few people here for a mall of this size, even if it is one floor, and I think maybe that floor lease sign might have something to do with it too, because it's telling a tale of what's inside the mall. There is not a whole lot left from what there wasn't in its heyday, and being that I visited this mall for filming during February break for public schools that were around here, there should have been more people here than there actually were, but as a result of how much it has fallen over the years, it really has become like a last resort for some people. So this Macy's store that you see here actually did not start as a Macy's. When the mall opened in 1975, this space is actually an Edgar department store. Now, in '89, the store was taken over by Jordan Marsh, and then in '96, Macy's eventually took it. You can see they actually have not done too much to it in the grand scheme of things. For one thing, it's not even their most current logo with the red star, and this is a one-floor Macy's, whereas most stores are 2 or 3. And the inside, as nice as it is kept, is very much dated and nothing like your typical Macy's. And then the outside is much worse. You can see that this building just looks in dire need of just a fix-up of some sort. It's a bit of an interesting situation. A little bit of a jump in footage here as we come over to the Sears. Now, the Sears was a original anchor to the mall. They closed in 2017 due to their mass liquidation of certain stores as they're trying to restructure themselves as a business. Many will be aware of the fact that that isn't going too well for them, but they're still around in certain areas. There's actually a Sears nearby at the Dartmouth Mall. And a little bit further away at the Emerald Square Mall in Attleboro. This store just screams 70s architecture. It is completely outdated from the rest of the... Well, it does fit in with the rest of the mall, but as you see, we just went by an entrance that they actually updated. So it makes it an interesting situation when they put a brand new entrance next to what has now become just an empty hole in what once was a really popular place for people to shop. As we round the corner here and look at more of what once was Sears, I will shoot off a few more facts about the mall. There actually used to be a Caldor that was attached to the mall, but eventually the whole business went out of business and Walmart took the property in 2001. Now that used to be attached to the mall, and I'll point out where in just a minute or so. But eventually in 2013, Walmart decided that they would rather have a supercenter on the property. So they actually knocked down the old Walmart and built a supercenter, which you'll see, which you probably already have seen, but you'll see it again in a second. And where Walmart used to connect to the mall is just another entrance. Now, the mall does have a food court. We actually passed by the entrance a few minutes ago, but it didn't originally open with one. It actually opened in 1999 after Roman Delight and Newport Creamery, which is a local business who has several locations in the area, eventually just left the mall. And the food court did actually have a few businesses in its heyday, a few good businesses. It had an Italian place, it had Chinese, McDonald's Express, there was another local burger place, and I remember there being a Dunkin Donuts as well. Now, everything I just listed off is now gone except for an Italian place that just recently moved in. It's not even the same one that was there in the beginning. Now, this newer entrance here that looks a lot like the one that's over by where Sears used to be is where Caldor and eventually Walmart, before they opened up the Supercenter, would have connected to the mall. They eventually just opened it up as a normal entrance after they knocked it down, and that actually also goes into the food court. Now this is just a smaller clip I threw in that I thought was interesting, and I thought it was interesting because of how empty this parking lot was. Now, I can vividly remember as a child how busy this parking lot was when this mall was still popular. It wasn't always the most popular mall in the area. We always had Providence Place and Dartmouth Mall and Warwick Mall, but this parking lot used to be full. And now, with Macy's being the only anchor, and Walmart just taking up all the traffic as a building not even owned by the mall, you can see where the traffic has ended up now. This is the inside of Macy's, which you can already see is very different, like I was talking about. Now, most Macy's you'll walk into are laid out more in a rectangular racetrack shape, whereas this store is completely circular with this amazing skylight. I love that skylight. But you can see this central area is kind of where they put all the makeup. And then on the outside there are smaller sections for clothing, and it's much smaller of a selection than what you would normally find in a Macy's of a much more grand scale. So it's kind of fascinating to see how they've scaled down. Yet this Macy's does seem to get a good bit of traffic. Nowhere near your typical one, but it is popular enough to stay in business. Apologies for the finger there. Now, moving on to the interior of the mall. You can see that they had Easter decorations up, yet I had mentioned we came here in February, so it was a little interesting that they had this set up so early. They do still get the Easter Bunny to visit the mall from my understanding, but I'm not sure why they would have set up that display so early. Now you can already see here that a lot of mom and pop businesses have come in and taken up some of the empty spaces that used to house retailers that we're more familiar with, and as good of services that they probably provide, it's unfortunate that because they don't have the name recognition that a more popular brand has, it comes to the point where they just don't get the same traffic because people aren't familiar with them. And even the more national brands that are still in this mall just don't get the same traffic because of that reason, and it's unfortunate. We have Claire's here, which is unfortunately on much thin soil these days, and right next to it is a gift shop, which actually used to be a CVS. Now, this was before CVS's stopped being in malls because the spaces were too small to actually house a pharmacy, and they don't like stores that don't have pharmacies anymore. This Treasure Cove here was Hot Topic at one point. They just ended up turning it into an arcade. I'm not entirely sure what this VR store was here. It could be interesting, but it seemed like nobody was working that day. And again, just lots of smaller, unknown businesses, as good as they may be, just don't drive the same crowd, and it's unfortunate. This here was an FYE store. I always pronounced it as Phi. And I was here about a year and a half or so ago when the store was actually closing, and it was sad to see because I always loved coming to this store as a kid. They had CDs, they had movies, they had video games back then, and that was my favorite part of it. They eventually stopped selling video games because they just couldn't compete with other retailers in the area, and it just became just another store, unfortunately. I might find a thing or two there to look at, but it became a store that just focused more on pop culture and things of that sort, and there are already many stores where you can go for that, and I think they're struggling a little bit as a result. Now this is the former Sears looking in on the inside, and they didn't do very much to cover it up, so you can just see how much space a retailer like Sears took up. Even as a dying retailer, they still took up a whole lot of space in this mall, and you can see what kind of hole they leave as a result. It's actually a little bit eerie to see. And there was also a draft coming in, which was a little bit bizarre, but that probably had something to do with the fact that they don't keep air running in there anymore. There's also just boards buckling back there. I wasn't quite sure what that was about. It was strange. Now you can see going down here that I always find this interesting when in dead spaces like this they fill up advertisement boards with advertisements to get more advertisements, and who's going to see this mall and want to put an ad here? It's just it's a strange. I know that they have to put a placeholder there for something, but it's funny to see. It really is, and I don't know, that really caught my eye. And the thing with this directory here is I'm pretty sure it hasn't been updated in a long time, and a whole lot of those stores are just simply not here anymore. And I'm not sure that any of these kid carriages have been taken out in a long time either. And when was the last time anyone took out some of this candy? It's probably gross at this point. Now, if there's one thing that I love in malls and anywhere in general really is neon, and this nail place has really cool neon. You can actually see too in some of the skylight that there's this blue neon that keeps accenting the border, and I think that's just part of the theme of the mall, but I also love that. And it ended up being part of the thumbnail for the documentary, and that part was the food court, but we'll get to that. Walking back down this hallway where we came as we go towards the other end of the mall, I just wanted to mention that I'm sure some of you are watching this video going, yeah, sure, this mall is empty, but it's not completely dead. There's still things to do here, and there are just a lot of people that just like smaller, quieter malls that don't have all the traffic of a more populated mall. And sure, for those people, this mall will probably serve them very well. There's always a whole bunch of people at the Old Navy, the Macy's, and some of the smaller stores, and a lot of these mom and pop businesses probably get their loyal customers for sure. But as I was talking about before, the traffic is really what drives sales for this place. The traffic is the reason why so many of the retailers that people recognize are just gone, and the reason why most people do not want to shop here. So it's become a matter of it's basically just become a matter of money and what's reasonable for people to want to come here, and reasonable for the mall to want to continue as it is. And that's really the state of what this mall is. It is a mall that has its people that still like to come here for sure, but it's troubled. And I think a lot of people realize that. I was thinking when I came over to film this that this looked like it might have been the Hallmark store back before they eventually just up and left the area. And you can see there an old Deb store from long before my time, but I recognize them now when I see them because of some other videos I've seen. Now here's the Old Navy. It probably should be an anchor, but is just a bigger space in the mall instead. It hasn't been updated, so it pretty much looks the same as it did when I was a kid, so I find that kind of neat. And as far as I understand it, it still gets pretty good business, even though the day we were here there was barely anyone shopping. Now, of course, I found the place to drop your coin, so I will throw the audio in again. I loved recording that clip so much. Not only was it just cool, but it brought me back because every time there was one of those, I had to do it. And the same thing when there were still fountains. I think there was still a fountain in this mall at one point, and I remember doing the same in the Dartmouth Mall, throwing the coin in the fountain. Now we've gotten to the food court here, and take a look at this skylight. I gotta love that neon. I'm trying to figure out if that skylight was always that gross looking though. I don't think it was, but maybe it did have some kind of tint to it. I can't really remember, but it's strange. You can already see too how empty this place is. There's a few people eating, it seems like, but there's just a whole bunch of empty spots. This was the local burger place I was talking about at one point. I wish I could have gotten to eat there. I don't think I ever did get the opportunity. This smaller spot was McDonald's Express, and right next to it was the Chinese place that just recently closed, which is unfortunate because Chinese places are some of the last places to leave dead malls, so it's interesting that they left first, which leaves that one Italian place. And this is the old Dunkin Donuts, and it's pretty obviously a Dunkin Donuts. We were thinking that another local place came and took up the spot for a little while, but it seems like that also closed, so pretty sad. This drywall is just where Apex actually used to be, and it seems like there's very little over here as a result of Apex just not being here. And I'll leave you with this last shot of Swansea Mall's amazing skylight, and this pretty much empty hallway, but it still has an Auntie-Anne, so there's that. I want to thank you all for watching this video, and I know that it is a bit shaky, but I figured why not go back and take some old footage that I wasn't going to use for anything else anyway, and go back and document Swansea Mall properly, and in a bit more depth that I was able to do in that documentary. And maybe someday I'll go back and refilm it. I'd love to do that and talk about some things I wasn't able to do here, and maybe by then the mall might even be doing better, but who knows? Only time will tell. I want to thank my mom again for coming with me back in February for this filming trip, and I also want to thank Dan Bell and Retail Archaeology for inspiring me to do this in the first place and getting me interested in this dying mall that's just a little bit away from me. And I only hope to make videos as good as them, so I highly recommend you go watch them. And I also would like to mention real quick Faded Commerce, because he just put out a video on Swansea Mall not too long ago, and he's been putting out some other videos since, and he pretty much just reminded me that I had this footage that I didn't do anything with, and that I should probably put it out and have my own document of it for myself and for everyone else to enjoy. So yeah, maybe I'll do some more of this. I haven't really decided yet, but I've definitely got some more stuff lined up, so we'll see about that. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll probably see you soon.